J.R.R. Tolkien, Why the Movies Are Not the Books. An English Dawn. Tolkien was born in 1892. He lost his father and his mother before the age of 10. His mother, a converted Catholic, entrusted her sons to a priest. Tolkien, reading early, showed a talent for language and taught at Oxford beginning in 1925 when he was undertaking a translation of Beowulf. His love of language continued. He had invented his own make-believe language, but used Welsh and Finnish as an inspiration for the languages in his books. A devout Catholic, Tolkien believed that spiritual values ruled ethics and government should be small-scale. He enlisted to serve in World War I and married his childhood sweetheart before his posting to France. He contracted trench fever and was invalided out. First teaching at a women's college and then at Oxford, he was deeply attached to his wife, writing her poetry. He loved the folklore of England and the fantasy he had read, but was himself a romantic, writing in Old English and Anglo-Saxon tales and other old tales from the Arthurian cycle. A wealth of lore. Although the British Isles were steeped in folklore, it was a patchwork of tales and myths from all the peoples who had invaded. Tolkien's opinion was that the Welsh was the native language of pre-Saxon Britain, and turned partly to those myths and the myths of Arthur for inspiration. Much of the Mabinogion is a group of legends concerning Arwen, the god of terror, war, and revenge, king of the other world. The tales also concern the great queen Rhiannon, who marries a prince while rejecting another suitor, as Edith Tolkien had. Both the Kalevala and the Ring des Nibelung share a story of an orphan with a disastrous fate and suicide. Both also share a quest for a magical artifact. In the Kalevala, a source of endless wealth and grain. In the Mabinogion, a purse that can hold all the food in the kingdom. In the Ring, the Nibelung grants the wearer domination and material wealth. Magical rings appear all through the tales of Europe, and even the Bible, where the Ring of Solomon allows the wearer to understand animals and command jinn, or the ring in Plato's Republic that grants the wearer invisibility. An English mythology. Tolkien grew up during an explosion of folk and fairy tales aimed at children. Some were invented tales, some rescued from the vast folklore of Eurasia, and some about the current social situation. He was moved by the works of the Scottish minister George MacDonald, who wrote some of the most deeply moralistic work of the 19th century. His colleague in the Inklings, C.S. Lewis, wrote a series of children's books thinly disguised as Christian, set in a classical world of nymphs, satyrs, witches, and giants. But Tolkien himself wanted to create a mythology that was English, not borrowed from classical Europe or other peoples of the Isles. His works are full of creatures more native to Britain, dwarves, elves, and dragons, but he created a pantheon of gods under a creator, following in the ancient Zoroastrian tradition of a moral light side facing a darker side in an ongoing battle for the souls of mankind. Tolkien illustrates the dark and the light in the juxtaposition of the goddesses of light and growth with the monsters of greed and darkness, seen in both Ungoliant and Shelob, who desire only to suck light out of the world. The choice between good and evil. In Tolkien's world, the firstborn elves fight over jewels and kingdoms, but we don't see that they have a choice about good and evil. In the dawn of the world, there were only the stars, and many elves were kidnapped by the fallen angel Melkor and his host of monsters to be tormented and twisted into orcs. Tolkien makes it clear that orcs were not created, but were once innocent beings brought into darkness through pain and fear. But men, the last creation, had a clear choice that is demonstrated over and over. Aragorn is given two examples in his ancestors, Isildur, who fell, and Anarion, who held on to the light. Aragorn is again contrasted with Boromir, who falls, and Faramir, who does not. The stories of Boromir and Faramir are central to The Lord of Rings, complete with their trials, their rationalities, and their ultimate sacrifices. Saruman is again given a choice, a very clear choice in the two main antagonists, Gandalf and the Witch King, illustrated in blazing light and complete darkness of the necromancer, who fears death so much he is willing to embrace the dark. Again, Sam is given a clear choice to become like Frodo or like Gollum, although his love for Frodo doesn't know that he could become Gollum. We are presented with this choice triangle so often that it is clear, a character faced with examples of light and dark. The sacred feminine. Tolkien holds up the feminine light and dark for us in a more distant aspiration. In the Silmarillion, the trees of Yavanna are destroyed by the great spider Ungoliant. Galadriel, an Artemis figure who followed her relations to Middle-earth, where she used to hunt, matures over thousands of years into a lady of light who gives a phial of light to Frodo, which Sam uses to fight off the spider Shelob. Princess Eowyn, also an Artemis figure, follows her relatives to war and kills the Witch King at the cost of her own life. Called back from dying, she again becomes a white lady of healing and growth. The exception to the Ladies of Light is the figure of Luthien, who is later seen in Arwen. Luthien is the one who enables Beren to retrieve the jewels from Morgoth as a bride price for her father. Elrond makes it clear to another human, Aragorn, a distant descendant of Beren, that the bride price for his daughter is the defeat of Sauron. Aragorn spends most of his life on this mission. One cannot read Tolkien and not get an appreciation for his reverence for nature, especially the stars, the sun and moon, the sea, the mountains, and the trees. Why the movies are not the books. Don't get me wrong, the movies are fun adventure stories full of elves, wizards, war, and love stories, and have their place among a huge body of D&D fans. But I'm one of the few people who do not see fantasy as a vehicle of alternate worlds in which to play, where the laws of reality are bent in ways that can be both fun and dangerous. Fantasy, for me, is a deeply moral venue where the suspension of disbelief in physical laws is replaced by a mythology rooted deep in our psyches, calling us forth to grow in spiritual ways. Fantasy is about retaining an ethical framework in a world where the rules have been stripped away to reveal a kind of cultural mythos that most of us have forgotten. That is why fantasy can be good or just stupid. If it calls to a deeper self, it can drag the mind into a greater awareness. Otherwise, it is Disneyland, great fun, but no second level. It's not that I object to fun, but the fact that the messages of Tolkien have gotten lost in the fun. It would be as if people made cookies of Jesus on the cross to sell at Halloween, or that weddings had to be turned into mud wrestling. Although Jackson did a genius job on the movies, he forgot the structure and lost the deeper meanings, unlike George Lucas, who revealed the deeper meanings in the journey of Anakin Skywalker. The story is always carried by the hobbits, or lacking them, Gimli. who represent the initiate or the everyman. It is critical for us to see Frodo's development through the four crises path and see him develop his inner strength, his inner moral compass, as he overcomes each conflict. He is helped, but he is the one who finds help and deserves the help. The same follows Pippin and Merry and Sam, as well as Gimli. They are all tried over and over, and we see them grow with each conflict. We then believe in their strength and we trust them as characters who carry the story. In the movie, we are not allowed to trust the characters. Frodo seems utterly helpless, and even Aragorn seems to be too weak to be king. Tolkien was a genius as a storyteller. He took the hero's journey over 6 books, wrote 5 journeys together like a fugue, beginning with Frodo. In the movie, we are distracted by Aragorn's story, which is not the distant echo of the story of Beren and Luthien, but somehow changed into some impossible situation where each of them is dying without the other. Elrond, instead of insisting that Aragorn defeat Sauron to win his daughter, is then turned into a man who cannot lose his daughter to the humans. Frodo is not believable as the bearer of the ring. We are not given a chance to see his deeper side, but watch in horror as he is cast into the frying pan without us having confidence that he can resist his foes. He is helpless and has to be half carried to Rivendell. Without Frodo's development, and Aragorn acting as a helper and not the main romantic interest, the movie is only carried by the sets, the scenery, and the costumes. Although this is enough for the fans, I feel that Tolkien's idea of creating an English mythology is betrayed, and his grand visions, backed by his religion, are turned into something very superficial and misunderstood. All of us who write books with multiple levels feel the horror of this and dread our own works becoming misunderstood but popular. Ignoring Tolkien's main message. C.S. Lewis had a main message told in 7 books, representing each planet, the moon and the sun, of a great creator who sacrifices himself and then has to destroy his creation, but reveals the true kingdom. George MacDonald shows us a clear path in Choices of the Initiate. He shows us the easy way to fail, to see the deeper truth, but also the way to overcome the animal monster and man to become king. Tolkien's work is about the fallen angel who longed so hard to make his own song, broke with a choir of angels to sing in conflict with the great creator. The books are about the struggle of man to choose to harmonize with the world made by the creator, or to fall by creating works in conflict with the original creation. The work was timely and spawned a huge market of fantasy adventures and games, as well as adding to the Ren Fair fascination with medieval romanticism. The movie adaptations were amazing, but each story is clear enough that Jackson got some of it right, like the story of Galadriel, who passed the test of the ring. We see her rise into light and then realize that she can do more than preserve the Creator's work. She can punish those who defy it. But she relents this temptation and fades into the west. Frodo does not resist temptation. He eventually falls to the power of the ring. Boromir fails the test, Faramir passes. Saruman fails the test, Gandalf passes. Even among the trees, the willow has failed the test, and Treebeard passes. Tolkien saw the works of man often in defiance of the original creation. He lived in a time of war and destruction and saw the world as passing into darkness. He himself went to war, and when it became mechanized and saw his sons go into a worse war, he showed his fear of the ultimate doom of mankind in the fallen Numenor, the island of the human relations of Elrond who fell into the dark through their envy of the elves. He shows the destruction of Gondolin and the drowning of Berlin in his great work, the Silmarillion. He is not alone in his despair. The time after the Second War was filled with post-apocalyptic stories, but Tolkien believed in the greatness of people, those who choose to fight the dark and preserve the image of the Creator in light, song, and their celebration of the wondrous world. Although the movies capitalize on the love of orcs, elves, dwarves, and medieval trappings, they do ultimately preserve the sadness and hope of Tolkien, getting the emotion right despite the missing elements of the story and myth that Tolkien wanted preserved. If you like the movies, please read the books. Tolkien's vision is clear, from the children's poetry of The Hobbit to the darker pages of the Silmarillion.